Hello and welcome to Conversations. I'm Jim Blow, your host. Very pleased to have joining me today Jeff Hayner, Ward 1 City Council in Ann Arbor. Welcome to Conversations.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And welcome also to City Council. You were elected this past November. And why? At times it seems like no matter what you do on council, half the city supports you and half the city questions you. Why did you decide to run for City Council?
Well, that's pretty accurate what you said there. I was just thinking about that this morning. Well, I've been an observer of council for many years. I've lived here since the 80s, and I just, thanks to CTN, I was able to follow it for years. And I got interested way back when, the first time I spoke at council was in favor of the Greenbelt millage.
Okay.
And so that was a while back. And I've just followed it. I've been a common public speaker. I go down there a lot and speak on issues. I was reading reading the council packet every week and following along and writing to my representatives. So I thought, let's get into it. So there was an opportunity, kind of a window of opportunity, so I took it.
And you had, being Ward 1, a ward which traditionally has, you say, not only been democratic, but not necessarily always been sort of, just go along, but more of a leadership of the city. What specific issues, you mentioned the Greenbelt, what else sort of are you seeing yourself getting directly involved in?
Well, our big constituent's the river.
Okay.
And so Ward 1 is kind of the river ward, and I always like to think of us as sort of the green ward. And so I'm very interested in our water issues. I sit on CARD, which is the dioxin watchdog group with the county.
Yes.
Our meeting's tonight, actually. And so I'm interested in water issues, environmental issues. And like you say, Ward 1 has been it's traditionally been a little more radical than the other wards, and I'm happy about that, and I think it still is.
Okay.
So.
Well, you mentioned, moving here or being in Ann Arbor since the 80s. Where did you come from? What interests did you have growing up in, education leading to this focus?
Well, I really wasn't that interested in politics. I grew up in Saginaw. I came down here in '83 to go to school at the university. And like many people, I ended up staying. And so I was sort of just a kind of a student athlete type. I was on water polo team and some other sports teams and clubs. They were at that time at the university. And I just kind of fell into politics from just being interested in what was going on in our city. And when you own a place, then you're really interested in what's going on. And so we've been in our house over 22 years now.
Okay.
And so that makes you want to know what's happening, I guess.
And you mentioned that Ward 1 being, the river running through most of the ward and other environmental issues. Your neighbors, before you decided to run, what were the very localized, you say, concerns that you found that you and your neighbors were looking for support on?
Well, my kids were in the public schools, and so I was involved in the schools for a while. I lived right across the street from Northside School.
Great.
And so that's a great school, and it's had its ups and downs. It kind of reflected the neighborhood that it was in. And so I got involved in school stuff. I did 6 years on the, 3 two-year terms on the board of PTO Thrift Shop right up the street here.
Yep.
And so that got me a look at how board functions work and how politics kind of works from the outside a little bit. But you might say it gave me a taste for it. And I don't know, so that was interesting to me. I've, tree trimming and the environment and development and all those things have kept myself and our neighbors busy talking about what's happening in our area.
You mentioned the area around Northside School and that, and your decision then to step forward and decide to run. Did you have a primary in your race?
Yeah.
Okay.
We
So
did a Democratic primary.
Okay. How many were in the primary?
Two of us.
Just two of you.
Yeah.
Okay. And campaigning it's the first time you've run a campaign, right?
Well, I actually ran for Sabre Breer's seat in 2013.
Oh, okay. So you had some experience.
Yeah, and so that was sort of, like, I didn't think I was really going to win, to be honest.
Right.
That was
challenging and incumbent.
Very challenging, and a beloved representative of the people, and deservedly so mostly. And like you say, not everybody loves everything you do.
Yes.
But so I ran in 2013, and I ran as an independent. I wanted to go all the way to November, and it was basically I wanted to talk about two things that we hadn't been talking about as a city. There was our underfunded pension mandates, and also the Gelman plume, the dioxin issues.
Right.
And so, we got some press to that around the campaign, and I got my third of the vote, and that was it. And then, you know, this opportunity arose this year where there was an open primary. Sumi Kalasapathy decided not to run.
Right.
And I thought, hey, take my
Time to step
chances.
forward,
Yeah,
yeah.
so we had a Democratic primary and then the general.
Now, in the primary, I assume you did a lot of door-to-door and meeting with the residents of the ward.
Quite a bit.
Anything surprise you as far as what issues or concerns individuals might have, or was there a consistency on things like the environment? And we'll talk in a moment about the plume and the dioxin, but you know, other things that sort of came up that might have surprised you.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of consistent messages. People want us to fix the roads.
Yep.
They're concerned about the high cost of living here in Ann Arbor, affordability, traffic issues, but also that so many people just love Ann Arbor. When you go to the door and you knock on a door and you say, you know, do you have any concerns or questions about the city? And a lot of them don't. And you say, hey, that's great. It's great to hear that, you know. And then you just kind of, you know, I just want to say, well, thanks for participating. Thanks for answering the door. And you go on to the next one. But when somebody does have a question, so when I walked with people, we'd try and get a team out there on the street at the same time. And we'd write down what their concerns were because I want to address them. And then we'd sit down. We sat down after the primary was over, and I went through my walking list, and I said, what are people concerned about? How many times did they say the roads, the environment, the water? And we ranked them, and it was those things. It was fix the roads, concerns about the water, concerns about development. Those were the three big things. There are also some human rights issues in our ward because we have a real diverse ward, real mix of folks. I think that with, you know, with the Human Rights Commission and the Police Task Force for the oversight of the police, that was sort of a hot topic, especially in the general election.
I would say that was part of that was timing of when you mentioned that task force on the police, the public review, or you know, what role the public should play in sort of addressing the concerns.
Yeah, that was really a timing issue. And then in some of the because Ward 1 is so like I say, it's geographically diverse, and so we have neighborhoods that are large single-family homes. We have the older neighborhoods, part of Water Hill, and then we have the mixed neighborhoods, which are historic and student mixed together.
Right.
And those present their own challenges.
And you have a diverse socioeconomic cross-section, you know, you could say, of the city.
Absolutely.
And you also have one of the, you mentioned traffic, but I'm thinking that right through the middle, not middle, but part of the first ward is through Barton, and it's sort of cutting through the north part of Ann Arbor if you want to get to M14 the back way, so to speak, depending on the traffic.
Yeah, well, wave at my house because I'm on Pontiac Trail in Barton.
Okay.
So that's a contested intersection, as was the Broadway project.
Right.
So Lower Town also, I believe, played a role in the campaign because residents were very concerned about that project.
Right. Now, election November, uncontested, or was there an independent?
No, there was a independent. Yeah.
But in Ann Arbor, essentially, the ward decisions are made in Democratic primaries.
Well, yeah, generally, although we didn't have straight ticket this year.
Right.
And so there was no straight ticket. I wasn't getting all the free Ds.
Right.
And so we worked it pretty good. I had a 60-day plan for the primary and basically a 90-day plan for the general. And you know, we really hit it hard. I had a nice team, and we did about 6,000 doors.
Okay.
So.
All right. So you get elected, and now you take office. What, about 10 days after?
Yeah.
Once the vote is certified.
Mm-hmm.
Your first council meeting. Let's rephrase that. The first time you meet where you're actually, you could say, addressing specific issues and things are proposed as opposed to simply the swearing in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall what the first thing you voted on was? Or what
you'd think.
I don't know. Yeah. No, the first meeting. What were the issues that you sort of sat down and?
We had some hot potatoes. What were they? They're all in the past now, right?
Yeah,
It's like that.
Yeah.
So we had 40 hours of almost 40 hours of orientation over the first 2 weeks. We had full day Thursday, Friday, like 10, 12-hour days, and then the following week too. Prior to those meetings, and so it was pretty heavy.
What goes on in those? Because when I was on council in the 80s, there was no, you show up for the first meeting, you were expected to, know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's really great. I think our new city administrator has done a really fine job, I think, with the staff over there, and that's been my impression so far. And they put together a package. We had all the community service area directors give us their pitch, you might say, their PowerPoint deck, and we got time one-on-one with them to ask questions. It was sort of an overview of everything the city does, all the services we provide. you know, prior to that, prior to deciding to run, I signed up for the Ann Arbor. It was like a citizens. Oh my, some space.
Right.
But it was like a citizens academy, they call it.
Right.
And it was an opportunity to take once a week for 6 weeks. We went and learned about all the different service areas in the city.
Okay.
This was as a resident.
Yeah.
So it was 20 of us, got picked out of 50. And that was fascinating. So we did parks and planning, we did the water and sewer treatment plants, police and fire and things like that. And that gives you kind of an overview, and it kind of, honestly, 2 people out of my class Alice Lieberson ended up running in Ward 3.
Yeah.
Which was interesting because the administrator said, well, I hope this inspires people to be more involved, and it did.
Right. Is that academy or the citizen opportunity still available on a yearly basis?
It is. I'm really encouraging him to put that forth again, and he said they're going to. There's a police and courts academy that they're taking signups for right now, but this was called the Citizen General. It was like a Citizens Academy, and yeah, they're going to do it every year, and everybody in the group loved it, and it really gives you a lot of respect for the staff and the people who run our city.
And I would think, as you say, getting involved now as an elected official, giving you that background, and then with the 30 to 40 hours of prep the first couple weeks of council, you go in and you're, I won't say, in a sense, you're expected to know what you're doing.
Yes.
And part of that knowledge, and I guess my question is going to be, did you feel prepared of how the process works? Does council have sort of an expected how you not behave, but how everything just sort of works in a regular meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I actually did have a process issue my first week. I wasn't quite prepared on a topic, and I voted in what I felt was the wrong way, and I exercised my right to bring it back at the next meeting on a pedestrian safety issue. Yeah. And so, yeah, there is a lot of homework, and even when you're reading that packet, and there's all kinds of attachments in there, and in this case there were drawings and all sorts of things. Of course, you can't be everywhere at once. This was an Award 1 issue, but it was sort of a public safety issue, and so right away I thought, okay, I got to do even more next week to be prepared. Right. And so there is a lot of preparation going into it, along with just constituent concerns that you address all week.
Well, we're going to take a short break, come back and look at what are the things now that you're seated on council that are being discussed, and where you see yourself in the council moving over the next, say, 6 to 12 months.
Okay.
Ask our viewers to stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
CTN Sports, bringing local sports to you.
Welcome back to Conversations. I'm speaking today with Ward 1 City Council Member Jeff Hayner, and you've now, as I said, got elected and began serving on council this past November. What are the issues that you immediately got sort of thrown into that maybe you either were expecting or now you have more information and becomes a bigger issue? What are some of those issues right now?
Well, one of the first things we had to address was some out of budget cycle funding for the Office of Sustainability. And so back in July, the city administration was reorganized a little bit to put a bunch of departments under this Office of Sustainability initiatives, to address our climate action plan and legitimate concerns that we have about that. And so that came to us, and that was very controversial. We got hundreds of emails, mostly in favor of people saying, please fund this, even though it's out of the budget cycle, to make that until...
Now, the budget cycle is from June 1 through May 31.
Yeah,
basically.
Well, we're running to July. We switch, so it's July to July. But yeah, we have to be ready by May.
But and this funding was not a part of what had been approved because it was, in a sense, so new.
Yes.
Okay. Why would people object to it?
Why would there be objections?
Yeah.
Well, it was a lot of money, and it was out of the budget cycle. And also, not everybody believes that the solutions that are put forth in our climate action plan are the right ones, I suppose. I don't think there were great objections around the table. What we did was there was a request for a certain amount. Some of the council members prior to my sitting there had met with the folks in that department and had them kind of pare it down and break it out. And so we basically kind of took it apart, put it back together, and gave them most of it, you might say.
What you will learn that goes on during the budget cycle is you tear it apart, put it back together.
And hopefully, and I want to support these sustainability initiatives, especially ones that we see that are very actionable. Like one of the things we paid for right off was they're going to put solar panels on some of the Ann Arbor Housing Commission properties. And so that's something you can point to right away and say, here's my return, it's measurable right now, we're ready, we're doing something.
It's not just sort of, we hope that this works, or gee, we would look good if we did this, not knowing what the outcome will be, but let's, promote something.
Well, so we have access, and now with the internet, everybody does, but there's access to all kinds of documents and all kinds of projections. And if you read the IPCC reports and the other reports, they're pretty grim. And if you believe in the science, then we're headed for a situation that's sort of unheard of. And so should we do all we can to stop it? Of course. And should we also do all we can to be ready for the inevitable? Is another school of thought. And I'm very interested in that because that involves stormwater issues, water issues, and things. And I just feel it's so critical to life. I just kind of want to take that on as part of my term.
Another issue that has been an issue in your ward, I know, and Ward 2 and other areas, is the third annual deer call?
Fourth.
Okay. Yeah. And that decision to go ahead with it had already been made prior to your being elected.
Yes.
So now we're dealing with the timing of when in January and February?
It's going on right now.
Right, it's going on. But there have been protests also.
Yes, we actually spoke about this last night.
Okay. What can protesters, you could say, do from a legal perspective? And from your perspective, is this the right approach, or should we let nature just take its course?
Well, I guess, it depends on who you ask. Of course, you're asking me. And so I have constituents who say, live and let live. I also have some who I've read all the reports. Yeah. We've read the studies, the Browse studies and things like that. And there is a problem. We do have a problem with deer. My problem with the call initially, and this was years ago, was that we didn't seem to be having the conversation around how our development patterns had put us in conflict with nature. Okay. And that's the deer and everything else. And so that's a concern, and I receive a lot of correspondence from constituents who have moral opposition to it. They don't like the idea of guns in the parks being closed. They think it's a drastic solution to you might say, out of balance with the scale of the problem. Yeah. And so, that's a concern. And so after this year's call, we're going to look at the reports again. I assume in the spring, we're going to, well, I don't know if I will support it or not. We'll see how the money comes across, because it's very expensive. We look at $250,000 a year for this act. We have so many needs in the city.
Yeah.
It's difficult for a lot of people to justify that cost. So, we'll see how it goes. But as we push out, like especially in Ward 1, like further out Pontiac Trail and these fringe neighborhoods, we're finding that we're not only are we getting rid of habitat, but we're creating favorable habitat for them to come in from the townships.
Right.
And so it's an ongoing issue. The level, how we address it is what's going to be decided.
One of the things you mentioned was the issue of development and how development impacts the natural features of Ann Arbor and of an area where development might be occurring. And one of the big discussion points is the downtown. And I know that for some of the primary races, that issue of downtown development, what was referred to as the library lot and that issue, the old Y lot, and just development in general that we're getting too big. Ward 1, does that come into the downtown much?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So Ward 1 comes all the way down. It's the north side of Liberty.
Okay.
And so we have all the new construction. We have 413,
Carytown area?
Yeah, Carytown. So we have the new high-rises on Washington. There's one proposed on Washington behind the Michigan Theater. So we're getting a lot of that growth in Ward 1.
You are
for sure.
impacted as a
and
ward
then
that.
Lower Town is putting in 800,000+ square feet of residential right there.
And Lower Town is the area off of Broadway.
Yeah, that's like the Broadway Triangle, they say.
Right. And that's where those of us who've been here a while, the old Kroger
Yes.
and that whole development, okay, all the way down, what is it, Maiden Lane?
Yeah, Maiden Lane area. And so that and the DTE site are also very active in Ward 1.
Development. How do you propose, or how do you think we as a city should oversee it? I don't want to say either allow it or not allow it, but proposals are coming forward. From your mind, what needs to be looked at to either approve or not approve a given development?
Well, there's a lot of support behind revisiting our master plan. And so the idea was that you take projections, like SEMCOG gives us projections for population growth. You take those and you kind of extrapolate out where are we going to be, and they may be accurate, they may not be. But now I'm looking at things through the lens of the environment and our sustainability efforts. And it's possible that we should be preserving some of this open space and natural space and paying more concern to stormwater on sites and things like that. And so I'm mostly concerned with we just reorganized our zoning codes to make them, ostensibly to make them easier to work with. And so now that they're easier to work with, we're going to revisit them, and we're going to say, are these appropriate uses? And so as these township islands get brought in, and some of them are quite large, and Ward 1 actually has the largest undeveloped greenfield left in the city coming up.
Where's that?
It's south of Duvar and between Pontiac Trail and Nixon, essentially.
Okay, Turnberry area.
Yeah, closer to us. It actually abuts Leslie Park and Arrowwood.
Yep.
And so that's coming up.
Yeah.
And it's going to come to the city for rezoning, as are many of the other parcels along Pontiac Trail in that area. And they're kind of in the books, as it were, in the master plan as very dense development. Okay. Well, we don't know how much we can take up there, to be honest. And so I'm looking for solutions that take advantage of brownfield type sites, and not necessarily polluted sites, but sites, areas that are already developed, the State Street corridor.
The redevelopment as opposed to new development.
Yes.
Okay.
And we also want to keep a record of what's gone or what's going. Yeah. So like on Washington, there's a proposal for a 19-story high-rise behind the Michigan Theater, Washington State. So that we're going to take out 4 houses and so many square foot of retail. That's kind of somewhat affordable now, and we're replacing it with what? And so we're going to go back. I actually am going back a couple of years through our planning records and looking at what have we lost, what have we gained, so we can get a sense of where we're headed.
The affordability issue is one that gets brought up, you might say, by both sides.
Absolutely.
In the sense that if you don't allow new development to occur, that which is here inherently will go up in value if the demand of people wanting to live in Ann Arbor continues.
Well, essentially, although one of the problems that we're having with this new construction is that it's it's focused on a very small market segment, which is up here. We're not getting anything built in the middle.
Right.
The city's responsible for what you might call the low end of the affordability spectrum, and the developers are taking care of the high end, and there's nothing in the middle for the rest of us. And so how can we work with our zoning, work with our rezoning requests to encourage that kind of development that is more suitable and really is missing? And I look at like the stadium area and State Street, reimagining Washtenaw, and our connectivity with Ipsy and things like that. Not wanting to push development on Ipsy. They have their own issues. It's a great place. I mean, I love Ipsy. But we've always had sort of an odd relationship with them, and I think we should have more symbiosis there. And the Reimagining Washtenaw plan addresses some of that.
Great. All right, in the last minute here, looking 6 months, 12 months down the road, what do you hope you can say if you came back in a year to say has been accomplished, realistically in that time?
Yes. Well, I'm bringing forward a resolution in the next couple months to look at a pilot program for all nonprofits in the city. Pilot is payment in lieu of taxes. If you have owned property here in the city and you don't pay taxes, we're going to ask for voluntary payments in lieu of taxes. That's one thing. We want to have a written plan for dealing with the Gelman plume. You know, the city's in the court over that, and in court over it right now, and we want action on that. We're really, it's spreading. So I hope to have some environmental issues, and then I hope to have legitimate action on our climate action plan. Have made a legitimate commitment to that, and also a commitment to dealing with some of these city-owned properties. There's been some great ideas coming forward just in this last week by other groups that are putting together ideas to what can we do with city-owned properties, and that really gives us a lot of latitude to get the kind of building we want.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon, and put my thanks for your willingness to serve on City Council, the time commitment, the energy, and the emotional sort of tie into what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a lot, but it's also been my pleasure. So
great.
Thank you.
I want to thank our viewers for joining us today, and look forward to your continued support here on Conversations. Thank you.